Welcome in. Thanks for tuning in, whether it's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, whatever it is. Thank you very much. Make sure you click that subscribe or follow button right now. This is Always Talking Ball with Tyler Noe and Lance Barton. We're not going to beat around the bush today. It's time for post-spring conference power rankings. Portal's closed. Most of the spring games are all finished up. Finals getting ready to take place for all of these student athletes. And because we are an episodic podcast that has limited time, and some of us like to talk a lot, we're not going to power rank every single team in the conference. Just like last year, we're going to power rank the top 8, and we're going to do a consensus ATB ranking. These are subject to change before the season starts. This is just post-spring. This is as of April 29th. We've done our best not to look at any schedules at all, even though we've already got a lot of those, early season matchups, memorized basically. But all we have to go on right now is returning production, talent acquisition, and coaching. And today we're starting with the ACC, a conference that, if we're being honest, it's been on the downside for a few years now. And let's be honest, they're not part of the Big Two, okay? This is a conference that just saw 2 players drafted in the first round, which is the fewest since 2004.
Yeah, man, it's really in basketball and football that the ACC has taken a little bit of a downfall here the last few years. And obviously the Big Ten and the SEC, they just dominated the NFL draft. They're, dominating the amount of teams that make it into the college football playoff. The transfer portal, the majority of the best players that are entering the portal in the spring and fall windows are going to the Big Two conferences in the Big Ten and SEC. But as far as the ACC is concerned, I actually think that they are poised to have a better year overall as a conference, especially these top 8 to 10 teams in the conference. And the reason for that is the all-important position, the most important position in all of sports, the quarterback position. There's a plethora of very solid, good quarterbacks that's going to be returning this year and playing in the ACC. Overall, even some guys that teams that we're not going to mention this year in this episode here today. There's some really good quarterbacks and good quarterback play overall. I mean, Carson Beck, I know you're not a huge fan of him when he transfers from Georgia and had the year that he had 2 years ago at Georgia. Even last year on a down year, he still threw for a lot of yards. Very talented. I mean, he transfers into the conference to Miami to replace, Cam Ward. Cade Klubnik coming back at Clemson. I mean, just overall the quarterback play in general across the board, which we're going to talk about here going forward, which is why I do think that the ACC is poised to have a better year and more competitive group of teams in the conference this year.
All right, let's get into it. Our number 1 power ranked team in the ACC right now, Clemson Tigers, coming in at plus 165 to win the conference as far as the odds go. Pretty typical, 119 ranked portal class, 3 transfers. Which is actually more. Actually, that may be combined, more than combined what Dabo has done in other transfer portal classes. So he finally dipped into it a little bit, got a wide receiver, got some other players. They have one of the highest returning production percentages in the country. Obviously, like you mentioned, that starts with Cade Klubnik at quarterback. Their wide receivers are very good, all coming back. TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco, Antonio Williams. As far as the offense goes, their running game, probably the biggest question mark as far as the offense goes. But the defensive side of the ball, man, they might have 2 top 5 picks on that defensive line, and TJ Parker and Peter Woods. Like, those 2 guys right there may give them the best defensive line in the country.
No, I don't disagree, man. I mean, when you really think about it, got a little bit of a hot take here. I think this is the best Clemson team on paper going into a season since 2019. That includes that 2020 team and Trevor Lawrence's last year with Clemson. And the really good Clemson teams of the past that Dabo had that were the best teams overall, what do they all have in common? They had really good quarterback play. They had really good elite wide receiver play. They had a really good defense led by their defensive line, who were just living in the backfield and getting a bunch of tackles for a loss and sacks. And then they had an elite coaching staff. Check all those boxes with this year's Clemson team. I love what Dabo's done with the coaching staff and adding Tom Allen at defensive coordinator. Garrett Riley is going into year 3 as an offensive coordinator. They saw a really good uptick last year with their offense with Klubnik overall. And I said this last year, adding offensive line coach Matt Luke last year, I thought would be a really, really big deal for them. And it was. Their offensive line play did improve. I think it's going to be even better this year with the returning production that they've got coming back. And I love what they added too with the defensive line coach last year and Chris Rumpf, who had a ton of experience in the NFL, who was on Nick Saban's staff as a defensive line coach for a while. He's had experience at Tennessee, Texas, different locations. With the talent that they've got coming back overall at every level on the defense. That defense is going to be nasty for Tom Allen this year. And as far as production at the quarterback position, it's hard to top 43 total touchdowns, what Klubnik did last year. So I just think, again, overall, the starting group on offense and defense for Clemson, this is the most talented bunch that they've had on paper, and the best team they've had on paper since 2019. I feel good about saying that.
Yeah, man, Dabo just keeps doing what Dabo does, and he's not going to change really for anybody. He's not getting pressured, obviously, from everybody who's criticizing him for not utilizing the portal. I mean, heck, we were some of them, last year, kind of in our head coach rankings, which we'll get to later on in the offseason. But he just keeps doing what he does, man, and he's very convicted in his beliefs on and off the field. And if they get hot, right, and they go through the ACC like we think they can, and they get hot in the playoffs, and they pull off a national championship for Clemson and the ACC, obviously that would be a big, huge boon for the ACC. But, I mean, does Dabo just retire after that? Like, after just kind of throwing it at everybody's face, we don't need the portal. We're going to continue doing the recruiting stuff, continue bringing in top 10 recruiting classes. We're going to win it all. And there's really nowhere else to go after you win it all and rub it in everybody's face.
Yeah, he's just having too much fun, I think, man. That guy looks like that. He just seems like he has more fun than any other coach overall in college football. So I can't see him like when Nick Saban used to say that being a part of a team, being in the locker room and things like that, just like rejuvenated him year after year. And I think that Dabo is part of that as well. Like that guy's been a part of a team since he was a kid, playing sports himself, and then playing in college at Alabama, and then coaching in his career overall. But I mean, you made a great point, man. I just think that this year's Clemson team, there is a little bit of pressure on them because of all of the returning production that you mentioned, and especially at key positions, like having a veteran quarterback. I mean, Cade Klubnik's like one of the elder statesmen now in college football. You've kind of got a youth movement this year across college football in general with some of the best teams in the country. Breaking in new, younger quarterbacks all over college football. But Clemson, LSU with Garrett Nussmeier, which obviously Clemson plays first game of the year, they're kind of the elder statesmen now in college football. So if they don't get it done this year, or if they don't make a run in the playoffs this year, it might be a little while before Clemson does have a team that can make – they'll have a team year in and year out that can compete at the highest level in the ACC. But this is the first team that they've had since 2020 that can compete at the national championship level, and that we can sit here and say today they are a legit threat to win a national title this year. They do have the team that can do it.
Yeah, man. I mean, like they just flew under the radar last year. Like, and you said it when we did our win totals episode last year. I think it was 8.5, 9.5 for Clemson.
Dude, FanDuel had it at 8.5, and that was just ridiculous.
And so the expectations were about as low as they've been in the past decade for the Tigers. And so now they're back to, okay, expectations are higher. We're back to, late 20-teens expectations here. So, yeah, like you said, the pressure is a little more on. But, Dabo's a seasoned coach, got a couple national championships under his belt. Like, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and like the expectations this year are not to win the ACC.
Yeah.
The expectations this year are, and they should be, are to compete for a national championship.
Yep.
With there not being that one team going into the season that we all believe that is just like dominant and is head and shoulders above everybody else roster-wise, like Ohio State last year going into the season, we all talked about how legit that roster was from top to bottom. They obviously had a few hiccups in the regular season, but they went on that run in the college football playoff. Year before, Georgia and Michigan going into the year, and so on in the past. This year, there's not that team that we're all just sitting there saying that is just head and shoulders roster-wise above everybody else. Clemson has the roster on their starting lineup on both sides of the ball to compete with anybody in the country at the national championship level, which is what the expectations are for them this year, and they should be.
Number 2 in our ACC post spring power rankings is the Miami Hurricanes coming in at plus 340 on FanDuel's odds to win the ACC this year.
That's a big difference, man, from the plus, what was it, 165,
165, yeah.
160
Yeah.
from Clemson. That's a big difference, yeah.
Yeah, they went back to the well, obviously, number 4 ranked portal class. That's where Cristobal does a lot of his damage lately in the past couple of years. Obviously, the big acquisition was Carson Beck, like you mentioned earlier, coming back, coming from Georgia. Obviously, he was, swayed pretty heavily to go to Miami, and now that sway is probably no longer there, it sounds like.
Other than the money.
Yeah, and the money too. Yeah, and to live in South Beach in Miami, it's pretty solid. You got a weapon transferring in, to throw the ball to C.J. Daniels, who was at Liberty and at LSU, kind of underperformed at LSU a little bit last year. Francis Mauigoa anchors that right side of the line. He looks like to be a projected top 10 NFL draft pick in 2026. They got Ruben Bain back on defense. They totally revamped that secondary because you have the number 1 pick in the NFL draft in 2025, and to lose games to Georgia Tech and Syracuse like they did because they couldn't stop anything.
Number 1 ranked offense in the country last year.
Yeah, that's
the number 1 overall pick quarterback, like you just said.
Yeah, severely underperforming. They revamped their secondary. They brought in guys from Jacksonville State, Michigan State, Wisconsin. So they dipped in the portal to try to revamp stuff.
Yeah, and I like to hire Corey Heatherman as defensive coordinator. He did a wonderful job at Minnesota, one of the top defenses in different, statistical categories, all in the entire country. He was on Greg Schiano's staff at Rutgers before that, so he's got a really good track record. I definitely think that they needed a new face, obviously, calling the defense there. But what Cristobal has built, like we all know that he doesn't have an issue with talent acquisition. They do a wonderful job in high school recruiting. Like Ruben Bain, like you mentioned, for example, Mauigoa, the offensive tackle position. They've got players that they've recruited at a high level out of high school. And they're doing a good job of mixing in the portal with that. They're not just relying on the portal. They're obviously just hitting, let's call it what it is, some home runs in the portal. Like Cam Ward out of the portal, obviously that was a home run. Carson Beck, whatever people want to think about him, like that has an opportunity in this Shannon Dawson offense and the way they attack you vertically down the field. Carson Beck has a chance to really just be very successful in this offense. And I know it's strange to say this because he played for such a talented team like Georgia. He's going to have a better offensive line at Miami than he had last year at Georgia. This offensive line for Miami is going to be the real deal. They also, another transfer that they brought in, James Brockermeyer. He used to be at Alabama. He went to TCU, had a really good year at TCU. He was the former number 1 center in the country coming out of high school. And now he's at Miami. So I just think that offensive line is going to be able to protect back. The competition that they're going to play in conference at Miami will not be obviously as stiff, especially with that number 1 strength of schedule that Georgia played last year in the SEC and playing Clemson in the non-conference. I just think this Miami team does have a chance to make some noise and possibly be right there again when Selection Sunday rolls around. They could be one of those teams sitting there fighting for one of those playoff bids.
Yeah, the big question is obviously Mario Cristobal, right? I mean, can he get out of his own way? Will he? Obviously, I'm not going to blame either one of the losses really on him last year. It's a defense, but it's just like we've said, and we hate to say it again, but he does less with more than any other coach in the country.
Yep. I mean, I'm not trying to defend him. They are trending up. They obviously, having a 10-win season last year like they did, that was obviously a good trendward up from what they were before that. But, yeah, I mean, when you lose to teams that obviously you're significantly more talented than in the Qs and Georgia Tech last year, they kept you out of the playoffs with the offense and Cam Ward. Miami fans and everyone, again, it should be the expectation this year. With the talent that they've got, with Carson Beck at quarterback too, with the overall talent acquisition and the money that they spend, all of that, it should be an expectation that Miami makes the college football playoff this year. So if they don't, it's considered underachieving.
Number 3 in our post-spring ACC power rankings is the SMU Mustangs, coming in at plus 750 to win the ACC championship game this year. Number 3 and 4, we're splitting hairs. We'll get to number 4 here in a second. You can probably guess who that team is because there's a pretty in my mind, there's a pretty clear top 4 in the ACC. But we rolled with the SMU Mustangs here. Obviously, coming off making the college football playoff in 2024, losing that last second field goal to Clemson in the ACC championship game, getting worked by Penn State in Happy Valley. Not nothing huge, but Rhett Lashley's back. They got the number 40 ranked portal class coming in. So there. Kevin Jennings, though, that's the big storyline. He's back for his second year as starter in this offense run by offensive coordinator Casey Woods. They got a solid defense coming back. They got a couple transfers on the defensive line. And obviously, Rhett Lashley's track record with these guys shows that they should be on the trending upward. The schedule is a little tougher than it was last year. The ACC, mixed up their schedule, instead of doing, home and aways and all that stuff. But they get a little bit of a tougher schedule this year. And obviously they're not going to be coming in to the conference kind of as the unknown, under the radar and everything. Like, you made the playoff last year, you got a target on your back. Every place you go on the road this year, that team's going to be like aiming to knock you off, just like they are Clemson and Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about this SMU team this year, they're one of those teams that coaching continuity, offensive, defensive coordinator, head coach, all back, and your quarterback, and Kevin Jennings back. I don't even think this is really a hot take. Kevin Jennings has the opportunity to be a Heisman candidate with his overall dual threat ability, with the numbers that he's probably going to put up in Rhett Lashley's offense. Rhett Lashley's offense has always been predicated to put up big numbers as a quarterback because of the dual threat game overall, the way that they attack you vertically down the field. I know that everybody's going to remember the performance that Kevin Jennings, the stinker that he laid in the game against Penn State on the road in that playoff game with the turnover issues. But if you really look overall at his game when he took over as starter last year for SMU, that's when the ponies took off. And I just think, again, with the coaching continuity, having his offensive coordinator back and his head coach and his ability in that offense, I think SMU has the opportunity to do something special again this year from an offensive standpoint. But the thing that just nobody talked about until they were in the playoffs and people started really taking a deep dive into them last year, their defense last year was very, very solid.
Yeah, I mean, that playoff game, they gave up two or three defensive touchdowns, right? So their defense hung in there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, their defense is solid. They play really good. They play really solid. They're not going to be the team that's going to be the number one this and the number one that statistically, but they're just a solid as a rock defensively. And so that was what really got my attention last year. I know Kevin Jennings steals the headlines for his overall just ability just oozes through your TV and jumps off the page when you watch him. But I just think SMU's overall, the coaching continuity, quarterback play, and they seem to be year in and year out consistently playing solid defense. So I think they'll probably be right there in the thick of it again in that top 4 or 5 in the ACC and possibly competing for a playoff chance again.
Yeah, and I think for a young team last year and a quarterback who took over for Preston Stone early in the year, like you said, a younger team making the playoffs, having an experience like they had going into Penn State, having the turnover issues, I think that's just, to me, that's usually a good learning experience. And guys,
Agreed.
Really, the really good quarterbacks and the really good offenses and all that, they really learn from those experiences. They, take something away from it. They bring it into the next year and they improve on it, right?
Yep. Agreed. And the thing with these ACC teams, man, as far as actually competing for a playoff spot, that has to enter the conversation because of the lack of strength in the league. I mean, SMU went 11-1 in the regular season last year, went undefeated in conference play before the ACC championship game, and they were still a very much we're going to call it bubble team for the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to top going undefeated in conference play and being 11-1 overall, and you're still just a bubble team. So, what if they do go 10-2 and don't win the ACC?
Yeah.
Would they be a playoff team? Obviously, it's going to depend on what happens around them. But, again, they should be in the thick of it because of Kevin Jennings overall and that defense.
Yeah.
Like you said, the schedule will be a little bit tougher. But from a power ranking perspective, on paper, if Team A plays Team B on a neutral field, it's hard not to say that SMU would probably beat these teams right now on paper from what we're about to discuss now. going forward.
Yeah. Number 4 in our post-spring ACC power rankings is the Louisville Cardinals. And they were, we waffled back and forth with putting them at 3 and SMU at 4, but Louisville actually has better odds at plus 600 to win the ACC championship game.
Yep.
The number 31 transfer portal class coming in, QB Whisperer, Jeff Brom. He's a true QB Whisperer. We've talked a lot about QB Whisperers on the show, and we've been criticized for it, but I think Jeff Brom's one of those guys who really gets the most out of his quarterbacks. He brings in Miller Moss from USC, who played well for the past, 13 months under Lincoln Riley from that bowl game against Louisville last year. He played well last year in certain games. And obviously, I think
Jeff Brom saw him sling about 5 or 6 tutties against his squad in that bowl game and said, "Yeah, I'll take him.
Yeah,
I'll take him and let him be my QB."
Yeah, and you got to think, Miller Moss, obviously, playing a year under Lincoln Riley in the offense last year, he's going to take a lot away from that because Lincoln Riley is another one of those guys who gets a lot out of his quarterbacks. But Isaac Brown and Duke Watson at the running back position, they may be the best running back duo in the conference. Brown is a sophomore. He had over 1,100 yards last year. Watson had over 600 yards last year. The defensive side of the ball, they bring back a very experienced defense. Nothing but juniors and seniors on that defense. I think they got 5 or 6 transfers, but just littered with experience, guys who have played the position before. And we've seen other teams like a Notre Dame last year, Luke, who had 6 graduate transfers, like just an old defense, not necessarily a lot of the most talented guys, but playing, experienced ball really pays off. Louisville's kind of, in that top 4 with Clemson, Miami, and SMU. If Miller Moss plays up to his potential, Jeff Brom gets the most out of his guys on offense, they can make a run at this thing.
I agree 100% with the last statement that you just made about that they can make a run at this thing. They're one of those teams that in these 4 power conferences that kind of flying under the radar a little bit going into the year, whatever you want to call it, dark horses, whatever, to like compete for a college football playoff spot that you won't hear too many people talk about. I think Louisville is one of those teams for all the reasons that you just said. The experience that they've got, like not just experience, but like proven production. Let's go with that. The proven production that they've got at key positions on offense with the running back position, with Miller Moss. Like you said, Miller Moss played last year against one of the toughest schedules in the country at USC. Played against some really good defenses as well. Like we just talked about like some defenses that you don't even like think of that are really good nationally, like Minnesota last year. Like that was probably like the 4th or 5th best defense the dude played against. He played against Michigan. He played really good defenses and really good competition. It's going to be a lesser group of competition that he's going to be playing against. A really good quarterback coach, like you just said, and Brom, and a QB-friendly system. 3 experienced wide receivers. Colin Lacey's back from injury. Chris Bell is back. They've got Dakari Collins, who came over from NC State, who was a solid receiver at NC State. I just think that this offense is poised to have a big year for Louisville. Like you just said, between teams 3 and 4, you really can just throw them in a hat between them and SMU. We went with SMU, obviously, for certain reasons, but I think Louisville's right there with them, and I think they're right there also. I think they're right there with Miami as well in this conference. The key for me will be what are they going to be defensively? They don't have to be just stifling. They don't have to be a top 10 nationally ranked defense. They need to be able to get some turnovers. They need to be able to hold their own and just get the damn ball back to that offense, because that offense is going to be really, really good under Jeff Brom this year if they can stay healthy.
Yeah, you looked a little surprised when I said that that Brown and Watson might be the best running back duo in the conference.
No, I'm not surprised. It was just I hadn't really thought. Honestly, at this point, as we sit here today in April, I haven't really thought about like that. But when you mentioned that, I was like, yeah. Honestly, I could see that. Maffa left at Clemson, and Miami's lost a couple of backs as well. Amarian Hampton's gone at North Carolina. I could having 1,000-yard returning back like that at Louisville, and overall just proven production. I could definitely see that.
And you got to think the balance is going to help the passing game too, which obviously Brom, 100%. He loves, that passing game, and he lives by that with Tyler Shuck last year, getting him drafted in the 2nd round. Like, I think the balance for the Louisville offense is key.
They've been balanced since he's been at Louisville. This is his third year now. The 2 years previously, they're a lot more balanced than they were at Purdue, and I just think that probably has to do with they didn't have any like bell cow backs that he was able to recruit at Purdue, and just the offense in general, the receivers and quarterback play that he had at Purdue warranted that. But they've had really good backs. They've had good talent that he's been able to bring in at Louisville. I agree 100%. Having that run game to take a little pressure off Miller Moss could be a big year for the Ville. Could be a big year this year for the Ville.
Number 5 in our post-spring ACC power rankings, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets coming in at plus 1,200 to win the ACC championship. So pretty big gap there between the top 4 and the rest of the conference. But Georgia Tech, looking at the odds, pretty clearly the 5th team consensus-wise. They brought in the number 29 portal class, according to 247 Sports. Most importantly, Haynes King is back. Like you mentioned, man, the quarterback play, they may not be the sexiest names. They may not be, the flashiest guys, but experience. I mean, a lot of these guys are bringing, whether it's coming back or bringing through the portal, they're bringing
proven production
quarterbacks. Yeah. Haynes King is back. Jamal Haynes is back. They bring that, Georgia Tech running attack. It's not the Paul Johnson Navy attack, but it's just like Haynes King, if he can stay healthy, can just pound you. And if not, it's Jamal Haynes. And then they lost Eric Singleton Jr. to Auburn, but they replaced him with Eric Rivers from Memphis. So they've got weapons on offense for Brent Key.
Yeah. And Brent Key he is the definition of kind of that Chris Kleiman that we talk about, Kyle Whittingham's, the guys that do more with less.
Yeah.
Brent Key is a hell of a coach. If he was a head coach at one of the top tiered programs, he would. I don't think that those programs would have any drop off whatsoever. The dude is just a flat out ball coach, man. He's a G. Love the staff that he's hired around him. Be interesting to see Tyler Santucci, who was the defensive coordinator for them, moved on to head of the NFL to the Baltimore Ravens. But his ability to replace coaches and the things he's done with his staff overall in general has been flawless. And like you said, if Haynes King can stay healthy, with his leadership ability, his overall dual threat ability, his just production, man, is just jumps off the page again from a running perspective and passing perspective. I just think Georgia Tech also, too, getting a little bit of a schedule break. They had one of the toughest schedules in the country last year. So I think that Georgia Tech getting a little bit of a break in the schedule, it wouldn't shock me at all. Again, if we're sitting here, because not all schedules are created equal, especially in these larger conferences, wouldn't shock me at all if we're sitting here, in November and there's Georgia Tech in the thick of it competing for a spot to possibly go play in the ACC championship game. So I feel pretty good about having Georgia Tech at 5. I agree with you. The teams that we had in the top 4 are kind of separated themselves a little bit. But again, it wouldn't shock me at all for Georgia Tech to be sitting there at the end of the year with a possibility of competing for a chance to play for an ACC championship.
Yeah, I know we aren't looking at schedules a lot, but I still don't like the fact that they're playing that Georgia Tech-Georgia game in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and not at Georgia Tech at the end of the year.
I agree, man. I agree. They should be playing that at Bobby Dodd. And it shouldn't be a deal where they're playing that on a neutral site and then they play in Athens. They should play that thing in Bobby Dodd. I don't care if there's more red and black in the stands at Bobby Dodd, whatever. That should still should be played on their home field. I agree 100%.
Is our boy back at OC for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets?
I think he is. Yeah, man. Yeah.
He showed out last year. Obviously, that first game everybody remembers in Ireland against Florida State, which, regardless of what Florida State turned out to be, that was a solid win for Georgia Tech, to start the year off right. And then, obviously, what they did against Miami and multiple other times. And he did with Zach Pyron too. Like, he had to go with Zach Pyron against Notre Dame. Obviously, that wasn't successful. Like, Haynes King missed some games. Like, Buster Faulkner is a very underrated offense coordinator.
Yes, he is. And he had some suitors after him this past year to possibly try to steal him away from Georgia Tech to be their OC. He had some of the smaller schools, like in your Group G5 programs, that were possibly looking at him for head coaching jobs. But I don't blame him for coming back with Jamal Haynes and Haynes King being back. His stock is only going to continue to rise. He's definitely one of those OCs, man, that just finds ways to put points on the board, finds ways to move the football. They were surgical, man, surgical in that Miami game.
Yep.
That's a great example of they did a wonderful job of playing keep away from Cam Ward and that Miami offense. You're sitting there in that second half, and Miami's sitting there kind of like, we better score. The pressure that they put on you because you better score on everybody. It's like the triple option offenses. Like they control the clock and play keep away from your offense. And obviously the performance that they had in Athens on Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a game that everybody remembers that could have gone either way. I know that if you're polling for the underdog, there was a lot of people that were just heartbroken for the Jackets after that game, the way that they played in Athens at night. I think that was on like Friday night, Thanksgiving weekend. But the way that offense played, just remarkable. And couldn't agree more, man, that they are going to find ways to move the football and score points again this year.
Number 6 in our post-spring ACC power rankings. This is where it gets a little questionable, but we got Florida State. Obviously, it's very rare you pick a team coming off a 2-10 regular season to be in the top 6 of a conference the very next year, but they are going back to the well. They're going back to that transfer portal. 2 years ago, it really helped them out. Last year, not so much. They got the number 6 portal class coming in. We'll see if it works this time. On the defensive side of the ball, I got Elijah Herring over from Tennessee to come and revamp and anchor that D. Offensive side of the ball, they're going with another transfer quarterback. Tommy Castellanos from Boston College. Deuce Robinson, wide receiver, over from USC. Squirrel White. Most importantly, though, you'll love this. Most importantly might be the acquisition of offensive coordinator Gus Malzahn.
I agree 100%. I think overall the coordinator hires that Mike Norvell made could end up paying in huge dividends in year one. With Malzahn as OC, I mean, when Malzahn's just calling plays, like he's been a solid play caller. I mean, you can question some of the stuff he did with the elevating the quarterback play at Auburn of a few different quarterbacks when he was there later in his career, or even last year with KJ Jefferson at UCF. But when the dude is just calling ball plays, that's what he's best at, man. That really is. That is his wheelhouse. And then the hiring of Tony White, pulling him away from Nebraska, Nebraska's defensive coordinator. I mean, Tony White, when he was at Syracuse, was putting out some of the top defenses in the country quietly. When he was at Syracuse, when Dino Babers was the head coach there, did the same thing while he was at Nebraska. Putting out really, really good defenses 2 years in a row under Matt Rule. And obviously, I think he's going to do the same at Florida State. They needed a change. They needed some new faces. They needed to revamp that staff. And I think that Mike Norvell has already talked about that they're going to try to have a little bit of a different approach as far as like not just revamp everything through the transfer portal. Try to be more of the what everybody says might be the magic formula if you can help it, which Florida State should be able to help it, which is build through high school recruiting and supplement it through talent that you really need at certain specific positions through the transfer portal. Obviously, they needed that at the quarterback position because Gus Malzahn's offense, for it to really hum, he needs that dual threat. He needs the running ability from the quarterback position for that offense to truly hum, for it to succeed as well as it can in Gus Malzahn's system. If you think about all of the Malzahn teams that have put up the best offenses production in his career, they've all been really good dual threat quarterbacks. And Castellanos should be able to do exactly that. The way he left Boston College, a little questionable, but he's been given the keys to the kingdom there in Doak Campbell this year. Obviously, they start off with a tough game against Alabama right out of the gate. But you said it, man. I mean, I think that most people, if they're really, being honest with themselves, that was a complete admiration last year, what happened. I mean, 2-10, that's not what Mike Norvell and Florida State are going to be consistently going forward. I mean, if you really want to look at it as far as the biggest jump from last year to this year as far as win totals are concerned, I mean, you got to think that improving their wins from one year to the next, I mean, Florida State's probably going to be somewhere falling in line of that kind of 8-win range this year, somewhere around that line. I mean, it's hard to improve your win total from one year to the next, like 6-7 wins, but Florida State's poised to be able to do that this year. They've still got tons of talent. They got really good coaches. Mike Norvell's a really good coach. They went undefeated the year before. He didn't forget how to coach.
Yeah, I was going to say, right side, they're 15-11 in their last 26 games.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, that's a great program. I mean, there's going to be 30 for 30s probably about the 2024 Florida State fall off at some point. Like, that is a wonderful case study in the new transfer portal
Yeah.
era about how if you hit, it can be very fruitful for you. If you miss in the transfer portal, it can really tank you. And that's obviously what happened with Florida State. But I think they're going to be much better this year. Again, I could see them being in that kind of 8 to 9 win range this year, and a big bounce back year for the Noles.
That's a good question for later on in the offseason is what team has the best chance to be this year's Florida State? Like, meaning, like, they went through the portal, they got high expectations, and they just fall on their face. But my question to you is, how scared are you going to be week one? You turn on that game and you see Gus Malzahn on the other sideline calling plays against your defense.
Yeah, he definitely had some success in his day coaching against the Knicks. He was kind of the Auburn in general was really the team that was kind of there wasn't really a kryptonite for Nick Saban in his time at Alabama, obviously, but Auburn did have a little more success than other teams did when he had Nick Marshall as his quarterback, and the year that he had Jarrett Stidham with Kerryon Johnson at tailback, they got Bama that year at home. But really, when they played Alabama at home in that snake pit there in Jordan-Hare, Malzahn definitely dialed up some ball plays. And obviously, you got to think that he's really excited to be able to call some plays and have a ton of time to prepare all off season for Alabama. But it's a little bit of a different defense, obviously, with Kane Wommack. Nick Saban's not there anymore. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all to see them have a little, some success week one with a dual threat quarterback like that against Alabama's defense. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Number 7 in our post-spring ACC power rankings, the Duke Blue Devils, who, like Florida State, come in at plus 2,500, 25 to 1 to win the ACC championship game this year. Manny Diaz didn't go to the portal much. Number 91 portal class. Obviously, he went to the portal at quarterback to replace Malik Murphy. He replaced him with Darian Mensah from Tulane, who had a very solid freshman year last year. We kind of thought Mensah would be at Tulane for a while playing for John Sumrall, but he opts to go to Durham this offseason and play in the ACC. They got Andrell Anthony to come over at wide receiver from Oklahoma, who was part of that Oklahoma wide receiver core last year that everyone was super high on, but then, just injuries plagued them to death. But Jacquez Moore is coming back at running back. The big story last year for Duke was winning a lot of close games, and a big part of that was their defense. Their defense won them a lot of games last year, but good news for them is their defense looks solid again this year.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Manny Diaz obviously hangs his hat on defense. No question about it. But, I mean, when you really think about it, Darian Mensah, there's a lot of high-level P4 programs that probably wanted that kid. And for Duke to be able to, that was a huge, huge pickup, landing him in the portal like that. Like, when your quarterback and Malik Murphy decides that he's going to leave, when that happened, I remember thinking he wasn't the reason Duke went 9-3 last year in the regular season. It was that defense being a little more fortunate in the turnover margin. It was not on Malik Murphy's shoulders. But when he left, I mean, you're thinking Duke, for his history wise, that's probably going to be really hard for them to replace him with a quarterback that's better. And they upgraded to quarterback. I think everybody was kind of surprised that Darian Mensah chose to go to Duke of all places. But I think that system in general is a quarterback friendly system. Like you said, Andrell Anthony coming over at receiver. It's Manny Diaz, honestly, if we really want to get down to it, one of the best coaching jobs by far in all of college football last year.
Oh, yeah.
I remember last year during spring ball, they almost couldn't even have maybe they didn't have a spring game. They either almost didn't have a spring game or they didn't because they didn't have enough offensive linemen. And he had to, after the spring, dip into I'm talking about low-level FCS level play to go just find offense. He was grabbing offensive linemen from the Ivy League and stuff, trying to just field bodies. And they found a way to go 9-3.
They had to go to the Ivy League because those are the only guys who can qualify to play at Duke.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, can he build on that year one to year two? Again, I would imagine it's going to be hard for Duke to top going 9-3 or to match that. But again, Manny Diaz did a wonderful job. Defense should be solid again. If they can get really good play out of Menz at the quarterback position, they could be, I kind of think they're going to regress a little bit, kind of closer to that 6-7 win range, being bowl eligible. But if Mensa plays really good at quarterback, then they could have another special year again at Duke.
Number 8 in our post-spring ACC power rankings is 8 miles down the road in Tobacco Road, the North Carolina Tar Heels, which actually come in at 20-1 to win the ACC championship game ahead of Florida State and Duke. So if you want to bet this team, you're going to be paying that Bill Belichick tax because that's, he's the hot team. He's the hot coach right now coming over. I mean, he's the GOAT, right? And he's coming to coach college ball for the first time. And he's doing it in Chapel Hill, where he obviously had some work to do from Mac Brown leaving. They had a mass exodus of players, so they got the number 9 transfer portal class coming in. We don't know much about what was going on this spring because typical Billy B and his shtick, he hasn't made any players available to the media. And instead, he's just doing really awkward interviews with CBS. But one of their big guys they got, obviously from South Alabama, Gio Lopez at quarterback. He's a guy that, he looks like a typical Belichick quarterback. He takes care of the ball, 16 career games. He just has one multi-interception game. So he doesn't turn the ball over a lot. But North Carolina is a really interesting team this year that obviously, they have the talent, but is the Belichick way and the Belichick method, is he going to be able to relate to his players? Is he going to transition from the NFL to the college ranks?
I think that the biggest thing with this North Carolina team, and I know, man, we're not predicting schedules and but like schedule obviously is important. But when it comes to a power ranking, we're not looking at schedules. But this team, it's hard not to mention their schedule. Like they've got the weakest schedule of any team in the Power Four.
Yeah.
And they're that team this year that you could be sitting there like maybe they're not one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the ACC, but because of their schedule, they're sitting there at the end of the year in the thick of it in the ACC race because they're not playing Clemson, they're not playing, Miami, they're not playing the best teams in the conference overall. Like SMU last year, but SMU was a good football team last year, but they also did not play Miami or Clemson in the regular season last year. So that obviously did, Ian, it helps your chances to get to the ACC championship game when you're not playing the best teams in the conference. But obviously, Belichick did a wonderful job in hiring the staff around him. His son, Steve Belichick, is very well respected as a defensive coordinator. He was at Washington last year, did a really good job at Washington as a defensive coordinator last year for Jed Fish. Freddie Kitchens, who's a former NFL head coach, and who's been an offensive coordinator in the NFL and in college football as his OC in North Carolina. So for me, it really just to see, like, I'm just interested to see, like, what is the overall, like, skill position group going to be like on offense? Will the defense with both Belichick's, like, obviously, like, Bill's going to have a hand in the defense as well. Like, we know that's what Bill Belichick's specialty is. Will that defense be able to dominate at the college football level with maybe not as much talent as he's used to working with, but they've done a good job in the portal. And I love what they did at the quarterback position, man. Like I told you when that first got made, like that kid can play. Gio Lopez can play. Really good dual threat guy. He played well against the better competition while at South Alabama. Major Applewhite was his head coach and working with him at South Alabama. Major Applewhite's been at really good places like Texas and Alabama and Houston and things like that before South Alabama. So I think they did a really good job of acquiring a solid QB there in the portal. It's just going to come down to what do the new players that they brought in through the transfer portal, obviously in year one, do those players hit? If they do, North Carolina can compete at a high level in the ACC. If they don't, could be a rough year. And these last 2 teams that we had, Duke at 7 and 8, I know when Tyler and I were going through this, trying to figure out our consensus here together. I think you could throw Duke, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Pitt, and Syracuse. Those 5 teams, you could throw them in a hat. And if anybody watching this, if you disagree with where we have, who we have at 7 and 8, and you want to tell me you think that Pitt with Eli Holstein coming back and Pat Narduzzi's bunch, who usually puts out a good squad, or Fran Brown and Syracuse, bringing in Steve Angeli and some of the talent acquisition that Fran Brown's bringing in, Kyron Drones back at Virginia Tech. Like, if you want to tell me that you would have those teams over Duke and North Carolina, I'm not going to really sit there and argue with you. I think that you could throw those 5 teams in a hat and really come up with who you think should be at number 7 and 8 in the power rankings for the ACC right now post-spring ball.
Yep. So that's it. That's our ACC post-spring power rankings. Thank you guys for tuning into the show once again. Make sure you share it with a lot of your friends. We're less than 4 months away from Farmageddon.
That's unbelievable.
Think about that. August 23rd in Dublin, Ireland, Kansas State, Iowa State. We're less than 4 months away. So we've got, 15 weeks, 15 Saturdays or so. We're going to be pumping out episodes. Like we said, it's list season. It's ranking season. We're going to be filling your timelines on social media with a lot of college football content. So make sure you follow us on there. We're going to be pumping out episodes. Like I said, make sure you subscribe and follow there. Share it with your friends. If you're ACC fans, Big 12, SEC, Big 10, G5 maybe, we'll see. But we appreciate you guys tuning in as always, and we'll be back next time.